Number 1.
Ci'lina Deloney was only 21 years old when she was found murdered on January 16, 2017. Prior to her untimely death, Ci'lina lived on the Comac Nation Reservation in Oklahoma. She had been married since she was 16 years old, and she and her husband raised a daughter together. According to Ci'lina's sister, Jornie Tothy, Ci'lina was struggling financially and emotionally in the months leading up to her death. In October 2016, Ci'lina was at work when she learned that 3 men had broken into her home and robbed her family. Ci'lina's husband, daughter, and sister Jornie were inside the home during the robbery, and all 3 of them were held at gunpoint. After learning about the robbery, Ci'lina rushed home from work to comfort her daughter. She lost her job shortly thereafter. During the following months, Ci'lina's financial struggles worsened. She ended up moving to a motel in Lawton as a result. Ci'lina last spoke to her family members on January 15, 2017. The following day, Ci'lina's family members saw a Facebook post about a body that had been found on Northwest Paint Road. They reportedly had an unsettling feeling that the body belonged to Ci'lina. Shortly thereafter, their fears were confirmed. Ci'lina was a victim of homicide. She had been shot numerous times. Throughout the investigation, detectives learned that Ci'lina was last seen alive at a Walmart located approximately 10 miles away from where her body was found. She was reportedly seen getting into another person's vehicle in the Walmart parking lot. Ci'lina's vehicle was found abandoned in the parking lot as well, but it did not yield any clues in her case. Detectives have reportedly identified the driver of the car that Ci'lina left in, but they were never able to locate the vehicle itself. In the months that followed Ci'lina's murder, a man named Darnell McDaniel was labeled as a person of interest. However, August 2017, over 7 months after Ci'lina's death, investigators confirmed that McDaniel was no longer considered a person of interest. Since then, detectives have not publicly confirmed the identities of any other potential persons of interest, though the investigation has remained active. According to a website dedicated to raising awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women titled Justice for Native Women, over 50 people have been interviewed about Ci'lina's murder. Additionally, 3 people agreed to taking polygraph exams. All 3 people passed. Ci'lina's murder remains unsolved. If you have any information that could lead to her killer, please call 580-492-8477 to submit an anonymous tip.
Number 2.
Danielle, Nicole, and Kayla all worked as bartenders at the same bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana. However, they were far more than just co-workers. Danielle and Kayla were cousins, and Nicole was one of their best friends. In the early morning hours of November 9, 2017, the 3 women returned to Kayla's house after a night's work. As they approached the front of Kayla's house, the 3 women were ambushed by an unidentified man in a black hoodie and shot multiple times. Multiple neighbors witnessed the event, including a witness who saw the man fleeing from the scene before police arrived. When paramedics arrived, Nicole was pronounced dead at the scene. Danielle and Kayla were taken to the hospital, where Kayla later died. Danielle, the lone survivor, was shot 10 times, twice in the right ankle, once in the left knee, twice in the left arm, 4 times in the chest, which miraculously didn't touch any of her organs, and once in the back. The shooter remains unknown at this time, but many believe that the women were targeted. In a statement released to the public, the police announced that they had determined that the shootings were not random. Danielle, who did not see the shooter's face, does not know who would have targeted them or why. However, she fears that whomever it was may come back to finish her as well. Police have not released any information about a potential suspect in the case. Danielle is still recovering from this tragic event, physically and mentally. Since the incident, she has suffered from PTSD and panic attacks. She does not have health insurance, but still requires costly medical care for her injuries. On top of all of this, Danielle is raising 5 children, but is unable to work as often while she recovers physically from the shooting. Danielle's grandmother has set up a GoFundMe account to help Danielle with her medical and living expenses. If you would like to donate, go here. Meanwhile, the search for the shooter continues. The case is still open, and being investigated, and police are searching for leads. If you have any information about the identity of the gunman, please call the Fort Wayne Police Department at 260-427-1230.
Number 3.
It's been more than 2 months since Domonique Brown, 26, was fatally shot inside her vehicle on Interstate 94 at Livernois. Information has been hard to come by, both from official and unofficial sources. So on Thursday, at Crime Stoppers of Michigan's Southfield headquarters, Brown's mother and stepfather asked anyone who knows what happened the morning of July 30, including who fired the fatal shots, to come forward and call 800 Speak Up and tell what they know. "Moms, dads, you know what kind of animals you've raised," said Brown's mother, Bertha Matthews, 45, in a message directed at loved ones of the shooter or shooters. "Girlfriends, you know what kind of man you're dealing with. If he did it to my daughter, he'd do it to you." It was 2:45 a.m. on eastbound I-94 at Livernois when Brown and fellow rapper Ramell Campbell were shot inside Brown's white Chrysler 200. The two had briefly attended Detroit's Cody High School at one point and had connected recently to make rap music together, Matthews said. Domonique Brown went by the stage name of Domo Brown. 6 bullets hit Brown, including one that went through her heart and lungs, Matthews said. Another shot took off a hand that Brown had raised to defend herself. Matthews and her husband, Julius, stepfather to Domonique, say the family remains at a total loss for details about what happened that morning. "Being in the dark is an uncomfortable feeling that angers you," said stepfather Julius Matthews, 40. That discomfort started immediately. The Matthewses learned of Brown's death, not when police arrived at their door to make an official notification, but via Facebook. Julius had been at his mother's house when he learned from another one of their children that the man Brown had been seen with the previous night, Campbell, had been killed. No one had heard from her. The family tried Brown's cell phone number repeatedly. It never worked. Bertha Matthews logged on to Facebook. The first thing she saw was Rip Domonique. Since Brown had been killed in Detroit, Matthews tried calling the Detroit Police Department. She had been killed on a freeway, so they learned Michigan State Police would handle the investigation. Lieutenant Mike Shaw, a Michigan State Police spokesman, said the detective working the case has been in contact with the family within the last 2 weeks. State police are working multiple leads in the investigation, Shaw said. Today, both parents have a suspicion that her budding rap career put Brown in the wrong place at the wrong time. Domonique never rapped a day in her life growing up, Bertha Matthews said. It was only around last Christmas that she recorded her first rap song, a tribute to her sister who had died as a baby. In the 3 weeks before her death, Brown had found some success in music, making the cut for Friday Night Cypher on 107.5 FM. "First time she told me about rap, I told her to rap her way back to work," Matthews said. Julius had his concerns too, but the music made his stepdaughter happy, and she was having some success doing it. The night of her death, Brown had been seen at an Oak Park music studio and a Michigan Avenue nightclub with Campbell, Bertha said. What happened between leaving the club and when the Chrysler 200 was shot up, the family still doesn't know. The lack of closure and lack of details on the how and why of Brown's death remains a concern. With Bertha holding Brown's son Diallo, 4, and Julius holding her daughter Denver, 1, the family pleaded for tipsters to come forward with information. They're splitting parenting time and duties for their grandchildren with Brown's fiancé, Matthews said. "I don't know my daughter's last words," she said. "I don't know what happened to her. But someone does. There is a $3,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Another $1,000 is offered if the tip comes before Friday. Tipsters can leave information anonymously, with calls going to a center in Windsor that doesn't have caller ID." The family left the office in the hope that a fresh round of public attention would produce new leads or information that could provide justice and closure. They also left with hundreds of flyers, which they plan to distribute this weekend. "I'd put the flyer on a billboard if I could," Matthews said. Investigators have said that they are working multiple leads in the case but have not announced any suspects or persons of interest. Families of both Domonique and Ramell do not know of any people who might have wanted to harm them. However, Domonique's family believes their career paths might have played a role in their death. If you have any information that could help, please submit a tip with Crime Stoppers Michigan.
Number 4.
When I first began looking into missing persons cases, I read up on the case of Jabez Spann. That was back in 2018, before his remains were found. I had him listed as a case to cover for a missing persons post. Imagine my surprise when I began researching his disappearance. Only to find out that his skeletal remains had been found in February 2019. I immediately noted that I needed to cover him for my next unsolved murder post. Technically, his cause of death has not been released, no word on whether it's been actually definitively determined, as that can be difficult when the remains are fully skeletonized and the investigating officers have not classified Jabez's death as a homicide. Regardless, it looks suspicious from the outside. Jabez Spann's story deserves to be told, so that's what we are going to be doing here today. Jabez Spann was a young black man with a dark complexion. He was, by all accounts, a kind and smart person. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about Jabez's childhood and relationships, but what I did find was so touching I have to share it. Everything I found described Jabez Spann as loyal, caring, and friendly. He was a good student and loved to help teachers. He adored playing football. He cared deeply for his friends. He was protective when others tried to bully them. He treated his friends more like family. Anyone would have been lucky to have him. If you would like to hear more about Jabez, in the words of those who knew him best, there are numerous articles and stories of his funeral. Jabez was 14 years old in 2017. He was 5'9" and weighed around 120 pounds. He was attending a neighborhood barbecue near 22nd Street in Sarasota, Florida on September 4, that year when he vanished. He was wearing a teal or turquoise shirt at the time. Little more is known about his disappearance. As searches began, and then grew more frantic, rewards began to be offered, first $19,000 from the FBI, which then grew to $44,000. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement added $5,000 to that number. The Sarasota PD added $1,000 to bring the reward amount up to an even $50,000. You'd think that would be enough to bring the leads tumbling in. But you would be wrong. No substantial leads came in until the worst possible one. In February 2009, skeletal remains were found near a fence line in Manatee County, a rural area over 20 miles from where Jabez disappeared from. The remains were found by an individual conducting work in the area, and that person was not reported to be under any suspicion at any point. The remains had been there for an unknown amount of time and were identified as Jabez only through dental records. No cause of death was reported to the public. It is unknown whether the police were able to determine one. There aren't a lot of theories in this case. Police are keeping things fairly close to the chest with their investigation. One rumor has come up again and again, however. Many believe that Jabez witnessed the murder of 31-year-old Travis Combs prior to his own disappearance and death. The supposition here is that whoever killed Travis Combs, or whoever was responsible for his death on a higher level, murdered Jabez in order to keep him quiet about the murder. After some digging, I can't see any indication of Travis's killer ever being brought to justice, so that kind of lends credence to this theory to me. Maybe the fact they haven't been caught is because Jabez disappeared before he could be involved in the investigation. Or maybe it's not related at all. Until further evidence comes up or more information is released to the public, this theory remains speculation. It's compelling, but it's still speculation. The second theory that I've managed to come up with is on the other end of the sinister spectrum. Jabez wandered off and died of an unknown injury or exposure. This theory seems less likely to me. I don't understand how he ended up where he was found. Manatee County is 40 minutes away by car. Something happened between his disappearance and him ending up at that fence. That doesn't necessarily mean something sinister happened. Maybe he met up with friends and there was an accident. Maybe drugs were involved. Maybe he met with foul play on his way to or from somewhere. It's important to note that police don't believe he left of his own free will. That is one of the few tidbits of information in this case given to the public. The thing is that we don't know and have so little information that speculating just runs us up the wall. At this point, anything is really possible, and I don't lean towards any one theory more strongly than another. This case is strange in that it is difficult to find outlined investigating agencies. From what I can tell, the lead investigating officer on this case is Detective Megan Buck from the Sarasota Police Department, or, at least, that was the case in February 2019. The Sarasota Police Department can be reached at 941-263-6773. Tips can also be given to Sarasota Crime Stoppers by calling 941-366 tips or visit sarasotacrimstoppers.com for more details.
Number 5.
Kristian Burnstad grew up in the small quiet town of Enumclaw, Washington. It's a close-knit community, resident Stephanie Signani says, where the kids become adults and send their own children to the same high school they attended decades before. Kristian's story was no different, as he stayed in Enumclaw through his 20s and into his 30s. But things turned south for the funny, popular 33-year-old, according to his friend Tony Signani, who is Stephanie's husband. Despite having caring family and supportive friends, Kristian got into drugs, according to Tony, and fell in and out of touch with his high school friends. Stephanie, who also grew close to Kristian, knew of the problems their friend was going through. But she told Dateline she thought things were taking a turn for the better when she and Tony ran into Kristian at a local gas station in January of 2017. "My husband talked to him, and when he got back in the car he said, 'Well, Kristian looks better. He's an addict, but he looks like he's doing a lot better. He's in a good mood, he's happy about things,' Stephanie recalled to Dateline. Both Stephanie and Tony felt relieved after the brief conversation with their old friend. But just 3 weeks later, the Signanis learned that Kristian had disappeared. Friends told the couple that Kristian was last seen in Enumclaw on February 8, 2017. There were times when he did go missing for periods of time, and no one really thought anything about it, Stephanie told Dateline. But this time, even after a while, he didn't come home. That's when his mom realized something was wrong. Kristian's mother Judy Burnstad filed a missing person report for Kristian in May of 2017, 3 months after he disappeared. Stephanie said Judy told her she waited 3 months because she kept hoping Kristian would find his way home. In the 8 months that followed, the community continued to grieve Kristian's disappearance. But almost as soon as the investigation opened, it turned cold. Feeling the cobwebs growing on her friend's case, Stephanie grew increasingly determined to find Kristian. After 8 months, there was still nothing. There was no news, there were no flyers, there were no posts about it, Stephanie told Dateline. It really bothered me. And that's why I stepped in and took over. Stephanie became Kristian's self-appointed advocate and personal detective. She met with Kristian's parents and offered to help, pulling together a list of people Chris would hang out with and names of places he'd go. Stephanie printed hundreds and hundreds of flyers and started conversations online with the Facebook page called Finding Kristian Burnstad. I started getting messages on the Finding Kristian page, people giving me tips and locations, with people saying, "I think I saw him here, I think I saw him there," Stephanie said. And so I'd go to those places, whether it was deep in the woods, to homeless camps or homeless shelters, Seattle, Tacoma, Puyallup, Bonnie Lake. Kristian's case became a desperate search for answers, not just for Stephanie, but for Kristian's devastated family. Stephanie said she was dedicated to Kristian, despite his addiction, and, as the mother of 4 children herself, she felt his parents' pain. Through the Facebook page, Stephanie received hundreds of tips from community members. And, in the beginning, she said she had high hopes of bringing Kristian home. But when Stephanie gained access to Kristian's own Facebook through a password reset process, her heart sank. "I saw that his last message was February 8, and I kind of knew that he wasn't there. But I still followed up on all the tips," Stephanie told Dateline. February 8 was the same day Kristian disappeared. "It was really tough, but when I had met with Chris's parents, I promised them that I wasn't going to quit until we find him. And they were just crying. Looking into their eyes, I was just like, I can't quit." And she didn't quit. In September of 2018, over a year and a half after Kristian disappeared, there was a break in the case. After Stephanie received an anonymous tip on the Facebook page, she says she shared it with the Enumclaw Police Department. The tip led a search and rescue team back to a marshy area near Kristian's home to investigate. Dateline reached out to the Enumclaw Police Department but did not hear back by Sunday afternoon. "I heard that there were police near his house, so I drove over there and I saw the search and rescue, the police and the detective there," Stephanie told Dateline. "They said, 'We found remains.' And I just started crying because I knew. And they said, 'Listen, we don't know yet.'" Authorities later identified the body, recovered from a waist-deep marsh, as being Kristian Burnstad. Stephanie says she was crushed. "I started getting really hopeful thinking, maybe this is somebody else," Stephanie said of the days before the sheriff's announcement. "I just broke down crying because this had been my life for a year, 24/7. I thought that I was prepared for it. I thought I would be ready. But I just wasn't prepared for that." A cause of death has yet to be publicly released. Now, 2 years after Kristian's disappearance, the case is being investigated as a homicide, although no arrests have been made. Stephanie says she is dedicated to bringing justice to her friend. On February 3, Stephanie hosted a memorial event to celebrate Kristian's life, complete with a photo slideshow, music and a symbolic balloon release. People were able to share some memories and talk to people who they hadn't talked to in a while. "There were some tears, but there were also a lot of good stories," Stephanie said. "The case isn't over, but we have his body, and that's a big thing. We didn't think we'd get there." If you have any information on the circumstances surrounding Kristian's death, please call the Enumclaw Police Department at 360-825-3505.
Number 6.
In January 2019, I reported about Stevencia Barlatier, a young woman who had gone missing in 2017. The 21-year-old was pregnant with twins when she disappeared from Orlando, Florida, and immediately I noticed that information shared about the case was alarming. To begin, there were conflicting reports at every turn. From her last known whereabouts to how far along she was in her pregnancy, reports about Stevencia Barlatier didn't make sense. On Thursday, September 3, I was contacted by Stevencia's cousin, and it hurts my heart to update that she's been found deceased. Brittany Bochard came across my previous report about her cousin and told me the tragic news. Just 1 month after I wrote my about Stevencia, someone was randomly walking through a remote field in Hernando County, Florida, about an hour and a half away from Orlando. The person, a local resident in the community, was collecting scrap metal when they came across the remains of Stevencia Barlatier hidden in the underbrush about 25 yards off the side of a road. According to Brittany, that person isn't considered to be a person of interest or a suspect in her cousin's murder. Stevencia's cause of death has not been shared. Stevencia Barlatier was born November 29, 1995, in Haiti, Brittany shared with me. Stevencia came to live in Florida in either 2012 or 2013. She was an older sister, a soon-to-be mother, a best friend, a cousin. She was a very social butterfly. She had such a caring heart for everyone. Brittany also stated that Stevencia was known to be on social media quite a bit, especially Facebook. Her last post was on November 25, 2017, and investigators later found a surveillance video that showed Stevencia Barlatier shopping at a grocery store that afternoon. She is seen on camera leaving the Publix store by herself, and there is no indication that she was followed outside. She called Brittany sometime during the day as well, but Brittany said that she wasn't able to answer the phone. "That will haunt me forever." Stevencia's family and friends couldn't get in contact with her, and her Facebook posts came to a halt. It was uncharacteristic for the expectant mother, so her loved ones began to worry. "That was not normal at all," said Brittany. "She would always talk to someone." So, in December 2017, we made a missing persons report. Her then-boyfriend baby father Emmanuel Eskerman did not make a report. She was missing, was 8.5 months pregnant, due in December 2017. That's what got us concerned. Also, she was going to have twins, a boy and a girl. She loved those babies more than life itself. She would have been the best mother. According to a news report made in December 2019, there have been a number of people questioned in connection to Stevencia's case, including her boyfriend. Police found it suspicious that he didn't report her missing, but there haven't been any arrests connection to this case. Even as she told me her cousin's story, Brittany Bochard would interject to say that it all brought her to tears. Stevencia's loved ones are pleading with the public to share this information with the hopes that someone, somewhere will come forward to help, not only bring them closure, but justice for Stevencia Barlatier. Anyone with information about this case is urged to contact investigators at the Hernando County Sheriff's Office at 352-754-6830 or their local authorities.
Number 7.
In January 2019, I reported about Stevencia Barlatier, a young woman who had gone missing in 2017. The 21-year-old was pregnant with twins when she disappeared from Orlando, Florida, and immediately I noticed that information shared about the case was alarming. To begin, there were conflicting reports at every turn. From her last known whereabouts to how far along she was in her pregnancy, reports about Stevencia Barlatier didn't make sense. On Thursday, September 3, I was contacted by Stevencia's cousin, and it hurts my heart to update that she's been found deceased. Brittany Bochard came across my previous report about her cousin and told me the tragic news. Just 1 month after I wrote my About Stevencia, someone was randomly walking through a remote field in Hernando County, Florida, about an hour and a half away from Orlando. The person, a local resident in the community, was collecting scrap metal when they came across the remains of Stevencia Barlatier hidden in the underbrush about 25 yards off the side of a road. According to Brittany, that person isn't considered to be a person of interest or a suspect in her cousin's murder. Stevencia's cause of death has not been shared. Stevencia Barlatier was born November 29, 1995, in Haiti, Brittany shared with me. Stevencia came to live in Florida in either 2012 or 2013. She was an older sister, a soon-to-be mother, a best friend, a cousin. She was a very social butterfly. She had such a caring heart for everyone. Brittany also stated that Stevencia was known to be on social media quite a bit, especially Facebook. Her last post was on November 25, 2017, and investigators later found a surveillance video that showed Stevencia Barlatier shopping at a grocery store that afternoon. She is seen on camera leaving the Publix store by herself, and there is no indication that she was followed outside. She called Brittany sometime during the day as well, but Brittany said that she wasn't able to answer the phone. "That will haunt me forever." Stevencia's family and friends couldn't get in contact with her, and her Facebook posts came to a halt. It was uncharacteristic for the expectant mother, so her loved ones began to worry. "That was not normal at all," said Brittany. "She would always talk to someone." So, in December 2017, we made a missing persons report. Her then-boyfriend baby father Emmanuel Eskerman did not make a report. She was missing, was 8.5 months pregnant, due in December 2017. That's what got us concerned. Also, she was going to have twins, a boy and a girl. She loved those babies more than life itself. She would have been the best mother. According to a news report made in December 2019, there have been a number of people questioned in connection to Stevencia's case, including her boyfriend. Police found it suspicious that he didn't report her missing, but there haven't been any arrests connection to this case. Even as she told me her cousin's story, Brittany Bochard would interject to say that it all brought her to tears. Stevencia's loved ones are pleading with the public to share this information with the hopes that someone, somewhere will come forward to help, not only bring them closure, but justice for Stevencia Barlatier. Anyone with information about this case is urged to contact investigators at the Hernando County Sheriff's Office at 352-754-6830 or their local authorities.